Hi, I'm Dave Klein, Senior Director of Engineering and Architecture for GuardiCore. Today I'd like to walk us through the GuardiCore platform, its value, and give a short demo. So GuardiCore was born to solve four basic problems in today's hybrid cloud environment. Number one was a lack of visibility. When we've gone from simply having a physical environment, which is kind of pretty easy to map out and see everything, to one that includes the legacy stuff you had from before, the hypervisors, containers, and clouds, now we lose visibility. And that's a huge gap and manageability problem for networks these days. Number two, there's a shared risk with other applications. The idea is you have these applications, some which are mission critical to your business, and they are in the same hypervisor or VPC as something else that maybe you don't manage, that maybe is a partner's, and the idea is that's a huge security risk. Three, it's difficult when you have this heterogeneous environment to enforce controls in a uniform fashion. And in fact, often you need multiple tools to solve the same problems that you're trying to do. Finally, the fourth problem is limited breach detection and mitigation. All the legacy security tools that we had in the past don't work in these new environments. A lot of people have tried. They've taken next-gen firewalls, virtualized them, and put them into the environment. They've taken IPS boxes and other things and virtualized them. The problem is we're looking at a totally different paradigm, one with a heterogeneous environment and lateral traffic. And this lateral movement of traffic is basically very different in behavior and needs a totally new way of being able to look at it effectively in a seamless fashion. So again, GuardiCore was built to take care of these four major issues. So what do? The first thing we do is we eliminate blind spots. We provide visibility across the entire heterogeneous environment in a seamless fashion. So the idea is you get rich context, layer 7 process level visibility. And more than just the process level visibility, we pull in all the various orchestration metadata. On this page here you see just a few, about 30 that we cover. So the key is you get rich context, both by having process level visibility as well as all the information from the various orchestration providers. So you know, for example, this is a Tomcat process and it lives in an Amazon VPC, or this is an AMI image, or this is something in vSphere in a certain folder. And that's critical for you to be able to sit there and go through that whole map and begin to organize and label and group things. And that leads to the other three things that we do. So from that cornerstone of visibility, we have microsegmentation. The key way that we do microsegmentation different than anyone else is that number one, we're converged. The idea is you do it once, you do it right, and you do it at a deep level that minimizes your attack surface. If I didn't have GuardiCore, you'd have the following problems. You didn't have the visibility that we provide to give you a map to show you how all the application dependencies work, number one. Then number two, you would have solutions that are only layer 4 and only for specific platforms. So you could solve the problem for AWS at layer 4, you could do it for Azure at layer 4, they both use security groups, but they're different. Or in NSX, you have vSphere. But it only solves problems in little islands of automation. And today, the goal of hybrid cloud environments is the fluidity to provide and the ability to move quickly across the entire thing and do something once. And that's what we do with our microsegmentation solution. Three, we do breach detection, and that's really critical. We have 3 vectors that we use. We have policies that we create with microsegmentation. Plus on top of it, we have best of breed reputation services, and it's different services than seen in the past. Our reputation services are based again on that lateral movement that are found in data center and in clouds. Our sensors are worldwide, and therefore in these clouds and data centers, and because of that, we see things that other people do not. The last thing is integrated incident response. The benefit here is we have intelligence built into our system. What it allows us to do is to take all the things we see and number one, reduce alert fatigue. And that happens very often. So the idea is you're only seeing the most important things that you have to address. Number two, with everything that we see, we automate a section that has a prescriptive set of things to do to solve the problems. So the idea is we greatly reduce the amount of time it takes to respond to an incident and minimizing impact. Now let's take a look at GuardiCore. So this is GuardiCore Centra, and one of the things I mentioned first is that visibility. That's critical to everything else we do. It's a cornerstone thing. When you deploy GuardiCore, we have agentless options and agent options. You get this map, and the map is of the entire infrastructure. In this case here, if I take my mouse cursor over here, you see you have a Splunk VM, and you're given all the information about that VM from the traffic that we see, both in real time and historically. That's critical, having that historical data as well as the real time. And being able to see all the transactions that occur. What's important, as I talked about, is we're dealing with the ability to do this in a converged fashion. So not only do I have my vSphere environment, but I also have, if I click on this one over here, my Docker containers, and you see all the information about the Docker containers right there. And if you drill in a little bit, you see you also get deep process level visibility. So everything from username, command line, and other stuff around it as well. So by having this rich context, it makes it very easy for me to sort through, find my applications and application dependencies. I know, for example, I have an e-commerce application. I'm going to pull that up like this because I found out that the asset names all start with the e-com in the name. And it pulls it up. Let's see here, let's find the load balancer. I'm going to say, do a hierarchy view. And very quickly, as you see, I can see my 3-tier e-commerce application. I can see everything it talks to, the logging server, the authentication server. This is a load balancing tier, this is your web tier, and the bottom part is your database tier. And so very quickly I can see that application and all its dependencies. From here, as we start to sort through things, people apply labels. You see in the bottom here I have a number of labels. Some of these labels were brought in from the various orchestrations they came from. So for example, let's say you were using AWS security groups or Azure security groups. We can import them in and make them one of the search criteria to come up with what we want to look for and come up with the groups you want to do. And so from here, usually people make groups up about the application, about its tiers, but also things like, is this development or production? Where is it geolocated? Is it the US? Is it Europe? Very important for GDPR, among other things. So the key is once you have this environment like this, you're ready to take advantage of that visibility into our other use cases, like microsegmentation. So now we talked about visibility and the value we add there, we can use that visibility to help us with microsegmentation. And there's really 3 ways that we do microsegmentation. When I talk to my customers, the first things they tell me is usually what we call global deny rules. They want to go ahead and say, you know what? Across my entire network, there's certain things, before we even get to applications, that must never occur. So for example, if you look down here, a lot of people tell me my development environment has to be kept separate from production. And that's important, right? And they put a rule in for that. Number 2, with all the standards today on privacy and things like that, most people say we can't do FTP and Telnet anymore, so usually that's a block. And number 3, people look at some of the things like their databases, regardless of what application they have, and say, you know what? They can't talk to the internet directly. They go through a proxy, and that proxy is DLP. So we start with this global deny list of rules, which is also a GuardiCore only thing that, is a GuardiCore delineator, and that's kind of really important. Once they have this global list of rules and policies in place, we then go into segmentation from an application perspective, which is actually looking at application dependencies and securing them. So you see here, I brought up on my screen all our applications nicely, neatly sorted for us, and you see 2 types of traffic here. And these are 2 different ways we do microsegmentation. One is you see, for example, the CRM application, you have all these rays that come out of it. These are things that talk to and from the CRM application. So the first thing we do is called segmentation, where we say the applications, we're trying to protect the application from the world. The second part of it is this ring here, that's called a ring fence. And here what we're doing is we are looking at the interdependencies between the different parts of the application itself. So what I'm going to do is go over here and say, let's see what policies are currently in place already. So I see that the CRM application is well protected, both from a segmentation perspective and a microsegmentation perspective. But I come down south here and I see the ERP application, a lot of gray, including the microsegmentation piece and segmentation. So first thing I'm going to do is right click here and say, we need to establish a policy here. So I go into it like this, and the first thing I'm going to do is say, let's do segmentation. So immediately what do you see? Everything within the ring fence, or parts of the applications, a different tier, are allowed, right? At first we're allowing everything inside the application. But then we start to look at everything that comes and goes from the application. We find a red line here that we need to address. And I say, jump boxes are allowed to talk to ERP? Yep, we're allowed to do that. And this is something here that comes up. So basically we say the jump boxes to ERP are allowed to talk, and this is critical. It's done at the process layer. This is different than everyone else. The idea that we're able to say this particular process to this particular process is key to make sure you minimize your attack surface. Why? I've been in business for 21 years in cybersecurity, and I can tell you, I can't count the number of times I've seen an APT actor come into play and hijack a port that's open for something else, add another process next to it, and use it to attack. So by having that layer 7 protection is critical. So now that we have segmentation for the ERP application, you see that all the lines are green that talk to it. Next thing we do, right click, and I'm going to say, now we're going to do micro-segmentation. So micro-segmentation, again, is the different layers of the application. So you see that ring fence that is green is now red, and I right click in here and say zoom in. And now what I'm looking at is the micro-segmentation portion at the different tiers of the application. So you see you have a load balancer up front, I'm going to right click here and say yes, that's allowed. And again, you see it adds it at the correct process level. And over here too, I'm going to say add allow rules. And again, you see it adds it at the process level. So now that application is protected, both from a segmentation perspective and micro-segmentation perspective. Also what's important is we start in alert mode. And the reason we start in alert mode is you might find that over the course of 30 days, maybe some new traffic pops up that you need to look at. So you'll see it as an incident, but we're not going to block it at first to make sure that we're not doing any false positives. Once we're secure, all you need to do is go like this, and now you've locked that application down, and it's thoroughly segmented and micro-segmented. So now that we've done a global deny policy for across the entire environment, we've done segmentation and micro-segmentation, I'd like to show you some incidents and why the way that we do this is critical. I'm going to pick on this environment here and look at policy violations. And going through these policy violations, one thing I see here is I have a certain application called e-commerce. And I have a very similar architecture to the one I was just working at. I have basically a load balancer with an Nginx process that's supposed to talk to Tomcat, and that's allowed. But what you see here at layer 7, across that same port, we have another process called attack process. If you look over in the corner, they've rooted the box, they've run a command line to talk to Tomcat. In any other solution, this would not be blocked. But in our solution, as you can see right here, it's failed, we blocked it. So the key here is being at that layer 7 is critical for you to roll out micro-segmentation, or the gaps you leave are too great. So we've talked about visibility, we've talked about micro-segmentation. Let's talk about breach detection and response. Going to the dashboard here, we have a multi-vector approach for doing breach detection and incident response. We had talked a lot about policy violations. The other two that are important is reputation and dynamic deception, also known as lateral movements. So with reputation, what is critical to understand is GuardiCore has become an expert in lateral movement in data center and clouds. And the key benefit of this is we see things other intelligence services do not. We've had customers tell us, putting us in their environment, hey, listen, you're 87% different than anyone else. I mean, what do you mean by that? Well, we look at other intelligence sources, and 87% of the time, they don't see the toolkits that you see. They don't see the domains and IP addresses you see. And the reason is our sensors are located in a different location, and we're focused on that lateral movement in data centers and clouds. So for example, I'm looking down on my screen here, we've become kind of the experts of these kind of APT players. For example, WannaCry, for example, BondNet. Another one is called Hexman that we've seen recently. We've become the key people who have found these data center attackers and cloud attackers. So going down this list here, we see we have GeoIP, and I'm going to focus on this one here with BondNet, and it says it's no malware and is also internal, which means it's inside our network. And that visibility comes into play again as we quickly pull up a map and show you which asset is infected. We see right here, this process is a known piece of malware that we've seen. And what is it doing? It's talking to a BondNet related internet source, and it's doing what we call in the lingo TLS drip. It's probably leaking data out to BondNet across 443. See how easy it was to pull it up. What's also important, I talked earlier about the fact that we have prescriptive responses for things, making it easy for the incident responders. So down here at the bottom, you see here we can go ahead and, first things first, we blocked it already by having an agent on the box. But besides self-enforcement, what we also have is the ability to report it to a firewall and block it there, or in the case of some platforms that allow us, if we have more than read-only rights, to do things like take a snapshot, suspend the VM, remove the NIC cards. So the key here, being able to find things that you can't find with other reputation services, both from a domain, IP address, and a process level perspective, and block it with self-enforcement, or find third-party ways to enforce it, is really powerful. So now let's look at the last piece. The thing that we look at lateral movement the best, our dynamic deception capability, which is patented. The key here, our dynamic deception capability, doesn't require you placing landmines throughout your environment. It doesn't need static links. The cool thing about it is it looks at every piece of broken traffic in the environment and analyzes it, and using intelligence, finds the ones that you want to look at and puts it to a honeypot. This is a centralized honeypot away from your environment. We can securely look at things that occur. Most of this stuff is going to be misconfigurations and stuff like that. But when we find an active hot one, it's quite interesting and very important for your protection. So what I'm going to do here is I've pulled up a bunch of attacks that occurred over time into the honeypot. And I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to find a human, because humans are fun to look at when they attack things. So we have some humans. I'm going to pull this up. You see here, in this case here, we have a human in a jump box, one of our jump box, using RDP to try to break into another machine. Either it was blocked or dropped or non-existent, so it's a failed piece of traffic. We moved them to our honeypot. And now they're in an environment, they think they're in the same location they think they're in, and we're able to record everything that they do. So first things first, we talked about our intelligence. We summarize everything for you. So you see here, they use remote desktop, they use administrator credentials to get in, they created a user and a password. They then downloaded a backdoor and a shell command script and loaded it into the machine. And you see here, they have it listed on port 2222. And they've stopped it, Windows Event Reporting Services. This is a great example, right? Someone breaks into something, they escalate privileges, create a backdoor user, a backdoor kit, and some other kind of command and control tools that they want, and they stop reporting services so nothing is seen. So you have your full summary of what happened here. Think about how this is great for an incident responder, right? They don't have to go through tons and tons of different log files and Splunk files or anything else. You basically are given, these are the 5 things you have to go after, and you go into it and get all the summary of the data. You also get session recording, screenshots, files, processes, network connections, credentials, users, a full PCAP of the attack, and most importantly, at the bottom, a prescriptive technique to go through and basically remediate the problem. So the beauty here is the intelligence of the solution allows us to take that dwell time that could last a very long period of time, maybe 9 months, and detect things quickly and remediate even quicker. Okay, take it down to minutes. So now we've talked about GuardiCore Centra. We've talked about our ability to visualize across the entire heterogeneous hybrid cloud environment. We've talked about how easy it is to do the same for micro-segmentation. We talked about our sophisticated but easy to use ways to do breach detection and incident response in one platform in the ways that can handle the hybrid cloud environment effectively. Thank you very much. I'm Dave Klein from GuardiCore. See you next time.